the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about the you effect, how you affect the people and situations around you. In other words, we're going to be talking about influence. For some of you, influence is obvious. Maybe you hold some kind of leadership position, or maybe it's on a team or at church or at school, or you have friends who really listen to you. Or on the other hand, some of you might think, I don't really affect, impact, or influence anyone. People don't go anywhere or do anything because of me. I'm not an influencer, and honestly, I don't really want to be. You might fall into either one of these camps, but either way is pretty normal. And either way, the truth is this: no matter what you or I think about influence, it's possible, or even probable, that we don't realize how much you affect or me affect there really is, or what could happen because of it. So let's start by taking a closer look at a story from Jesus' life. Let's take a look at John chapter 6, verses 1 to 14. I'm going to go ahead and read it for you. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here's a boy. He's got 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who has come into the world." So what was happening here? Jesus was beginning to gain a large influence because of the miracles he was performing. People were following him around. John tells us that about 5,000 men were there, which means that women and children were there too. So you might be able to say there's about 15,000 people there. It's not hard to imagine Jesus as an influential person, right? Because he had followers. He was performing miracles. He claimed to be God, and people were beginning to believe he was. However, in this story, there's a person that proved to be incredibly influential, even though he wasn't the main character in the story. And that's who I want to talk about. I'm talking about the boy who had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. This boy had influence because he gave Jesus what he had in order to feed the masses. Let's talk about this boy because the type of influence we can have looks a lot like this boy's actions. See, he had influence even though he wasn't a clear leader. He wasn't center stage. He wasn't well known. Maybe he wasn't athletic or popular. Maybe we're making some assumptions, but I think that we can all kind of relate to this boy a little bit. The truth is, Jesus wasn't looking for any of those things. The only thing that mattered was that the boy brought all he had, and it was enough. Because ultimately, this is about the power of Jesus and what Jesus was capable of doing through someone who was willing to be used to offer what he had. Here's the deal, you guys. You have more of an effect than you think. The way we see influence needs to change. It's time to begin to realize that having influence and impact is really just about being willing to do something with what you have, no matter how big or small what you have is. In other words, having an impact isn't about doing more, it's not about having more, and it's not about knowing more. It's about offering what you already have to those around you. It's about choosing to believe, even when it seems unbelievable, that you might have an effect on your friends, or that you might have an effect on the team or the group that you're in, or that you might have an effect on your siblings, or that you might have an effect on your classmates, or even in your family. And then just imagine what God could do with the you effect in the world around you. Even if that feels impossible, or it seems like you don't have a ton of effect, just allow yourself to consider the possibility that what Jesus did with a little boy's lunch is something he can do with your influence. And as you think about it, here's a few steps to consider. One, you can identify the who. Who are your immediate people in front of you that you have the potential to influence? Who are the people closest to you? Maybe it's your siblings or friend, teammates, or people in your family. Identify the need. What is it that the people around you need? Is it encouragement, time, someone to talk to, someone to listen, someone to help them with their homework maybe? Now after you've done that, this is the third thing. Identify what you can do to help and then do it. I want to leave you with this last thought. I want you to think about a person in your life who's affected you in a positive way. What was it about them that allowed them to have an impact on you? How did their influence impact your life for good? In the same way that others have had an effect on you, you have the same ability to have an effect on others. That's why we have small groups. That's why we meet together as a youth group, because the people you're around have an effect on you and you have an effect on them. Maybe more than you think. The question to ask yourself isn't, do I have the ability to impact others? Instead, the question you should be asking is, how will I use the influence that I already have? Ultimately, God is the one who has the power to change people. All you have to do is show up, offer what you have, and let Him do the rest.